Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Hello, everybody. What? Mm. Mm. Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm Tiffany. I'm still. So I don't know what all I told you guys last week. I had I discovered that I have two really severely compressed discs. It's just like when it rains, it pours, right? And so I'm getting treatment on that. I'm not in the greatest shape today, but I'm okay. I actually this morning I got up really early and I drove to Mexico. I didn't drive. I had a friend of mine drove me. We went down to Mexico, make sure that we had plenty of ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, just some extra meds to make sure that we're stocked up. So that is what I did today. No, I'm not back in the gym. I can't yet, Joy. I want to badly, but I don't have any flexibility. So hello, Jody and Awakening. I'll be all right. You know, my attitude is very good. I'm in pain, but my attitude is still good. Oh no, Joy, I'm gonna get back in the gym. Rest assured, that will happen. That will happen. It has to happen. I can't not do that because that's when I, getting back in the gym and making my core and all that stuff stronger. That's what's going to help me get back to get my stuff back together. Dana White. Ooh, I'm not sure. No, actually, no, I did not. I'm not tired from I'm not tired, ageless nerd, but from the drive anyway. Actually, So I have an SUV, and my friend brought her mom, and I laid in the back. So I put the seats down and I literally laid prone the whole time, and I fell asleep a couple of times. It's about a 3-hour drive one way to where we went. But I fell asleep a couple of times. So I got a little bit of rest, both coming and going. So no, I'm not tired from the drive. Actually, believe it or not, I sleep better when I'm in something that's moving for some odd reason. Oh, Doug wants to in, and I'm not letting him in. Who's Dana White? I gotta look this up. I'm curious now. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Mr. Gibbs is here. Mr. Gibbs, do you know who Dana White is?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. All right. I can take that. Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. I didn't know who he was. I know who he is now. I just didn't recognize the
As UFC president.
yeah. Hello, Rita. Oh. So you're going to get to see my face for a little bit today, but I'm gonna start moving around because I know I'm gonna get uncomfortable, and when I do, I'm just gonna have to get up and move. Hello, Tinkerbell. And Doug, it wouldn't be a show without Doug eating. And actually, Doug,
I grab a bite on the way from the class to this because I know I'm not going to get a chance to.
Where is the Dr. Pepper? I didn't see it.
It's in a cup.
I didn't see it. Oh, okay. I don't see. I see.
It's in a Taco Bell cup. Burrito, taco, Dr. Pepper.
Well, it would not be a show without Doug and his Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, I just don't have a can today.
Okay.
People tell me it's going to kill me, and I say, "Yeah, but I'll die with a smile."
I'm gonna die anyway, right?
Might as well die smiling.
Oh, Tiffany, it's no fun. It's no fun at all. I was explaining. Did I tell you that I went to Mexico this morning?
Mexico?
Yeah.
Well, for your medication?
No, not my medication. Well, we went down. I got some hydrochloroquine, some ivermectin, some Z-Packs. So a few other things. FedEx. Hold on one second. FedEx is here for some reason.
I didn't know they delivered to Independence Hall.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Talking to Steve Gibbs here while he's trying to figure out how to sign for his FedEx. We're going to be getting into amendments 18, 19, 20, and 21 today. We'll give him a chance to get back. I have a feeling he's going to turn off his camera and have it just on mine because he's going to be moving around because he's very uncomfortable. It's good to see you. I am Friday leaving for my tour. Dallas got changed to Corpus Christi. A private citizen is going to be hosting a dinner at her home in Corpus Christi. So if you're in the Corpus Christi area, San Antonio area, I'll be there on Saturday night. And if you want to attend the dinner, send me an email at constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com and I'll get you the address and the time. Then we will be in Hendersonville, Tennessee on I believe Monday. And yeah, that'll be at I think it's called Patriots Brewery. Used to be Galen Walker owns the place. I'll have the address of that location on Political Pistachio and DouglasVGibbs.com once we get everything set there. Then we'll go on to Williamstown, Kentucky. We're not sure we're going to be able to do an event there because the woman who was helping me hasn't been really very responsive. So I'm not sure about Kentucky yet. Bentonville, Arkansas, that's still in the works. My folks live in Bella Vista, just north of Bentonville. And I have a woman in Bentonville that said that she was going to help out, waiting for her to respond. Between the two of them, we should have the event nailed down within the next day or two. And then Colorado Springs on Friday, the 22nd. And Colorado Springs is going to be at a church. I will be getting the address in the next hour or two. Actually, I just got off the phone with the person organizing that one. And she is a lieutenant commander, retired, and, professor, all that stuff. And she's putting it together. And so we'll have that address going out in email and on the website as soon as I get that on there. I'm juggling a bunch of flaming torches right now. So trying to get not only ready for the trip, but trying to get through my week. Very busy week, because in the live classes, what we're doing is a citizen's oath to the Constitution. Because, everybody who has entered the military, run for office before, or has been in law enforcement, have given an oath to the Constitution. But if you're a civilian citizen who's never really been a part of any of those things, and you believe in the Constitution, but you never really gave an oath. So what I've done is I've created a citizen's oath, because I understand that the most powerful, the highest office, political office in America is that of citizen. And so if you're a citizen of the United States, and I know some people will try to turn the word citizen into a negative with the corporation theory and all that jazz. Being a citizen is a good thing. The word citizen was not in the English lexicon in the way it should have been. You were subjects. In Europe, there were no citizens. Everybody was a subject. The term citizen really didn't apply to the peasants and the lower classes. And it was a caste system practically. Either you were a noble or you were a subject. And so the idea of citizenship from the Roman Republic, from the Greek states, that kind of thing, was resurrected by the founding fathers in a system that was going on back then. Like in Europe, if you were a subject, you served the government. If you're a citizen, the government serves you. But anyway, so we did a citizen's oath today in class this morning. We're going to do it tonight in that class. This week is Constitutional Oath Week, and I have a certificate I'm giving for those who take the oath. I know those of you who are not a part of the live classes. Oh man, I wish I could participate in that. We'll figure something out. Maybe we'll do an oath here on this show or something, and then everybody who participated, they get a hold of me and I can mail them a certificate or something. I don't know. And we'll figure it out. But I would love for you to be able to take that oath. But I want to warn you, you take an oath to the Constitution, it never expires. All right, Ron, you back?
I am back.
Okay. Well, I was just telling a little bit about the trip, where I'm going to be going. Once again, just for you and anybody else who just got in. So Saturday night, I will be in Corpus Christi. You know what? Let me pull up my itinerary. It's around here somewhere. Maybe it isn't. Maybe I will go from memory. So Saturday night, we're going to be in Corpus Christi, Texas. And then Sunday or Monday, I think it's Monday actually, we're in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Tuesday, we're in Lexington, Kentucky area, Williamstown. And then Wednesday, we're in Bentonville, Arkansas, Wednesday and Thursday. I believe the event's going to be on Thursday. And then Friday, we're in Colorado Springs. The one in Colorado Springs is going to be at a church. We have an address. I don't have it on the site yet. The one on Saturday in Corpus Christi is at a private address, dinner being hosted by that person. The one in Tennessee is going to be at a brewery, bar. They self-brew. The one in Kentucky, we're not sure yet. That one's kind of in limbo. And the one in Bentonville is still being put together, so I don't have any details on it. But if you contact me, constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com, or go to my websites once I get it up there, hopefully by the end of the day, all of the locations, addresses, times, all that jazz should be on there. And we got the shirt done for this. So got the logo on the shirt. It says,
let's see that again. It didn't come through. Stand back a little bit. Okay.
Falling into my chair. But anyway, creator tour. It says creator. The guy in that red circle was supposed to be me, but he doesn't look like me, but he's much more handsome, so it's definitely not me. Got a rifle in one hand, a Bible in the other. It says creator 2021 tour, Douglas V. Gibbs. And on the back side has a list of cities. And we just got the shirts in today, but I'm gonna have to order new shirts. I mean, these first shirts will still go out, but the new shirts, I'm gonna replace Dallas with Corpus Christi because we changed the first city at the last second.
Let's get into the progressive era.
Let's get into, well, no. We talked about that last week.
I thought we were talking more about the progressive era.
Did you want to continue on that before we move
That's
on?
That's what you posted on the thing. You were talking about prohibition, voting, and elections.
Right.
More about the progressive era.
Well, yeah, but when I say progressive era, I typically mean 16th and 17th amendments.
Okay. Well,
but yeah,
I'm just going by what you put out on your email blast this morning.
Oh, does it say more about the progressive era?
Yes.
Subject line? Thought I changed the subject line.
No.
See, I'll change it and it'll pop back to what it was last time because I do copies. It's driving me nuts. It does that often. Okay. Anyway, 18th, what it should have said in the subject line was 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st Amendment. Was should have said. That's what I typed. That's what I saved.
Well, we're talking about prohibition, voting, and elections is what I see.
Yeah, right. Prohibition. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, 18th Amendment. Now, real quick. Okay, prohibition. You've heard of a prohibition, right? And we've seen the stories in the movies with the mafia, and the machine guns and the Big Easy and all that jazz, and the drinking and dancing and hidden locations, all that.
That's what led to the NFA.
And the thing is, people think, well, yeah, they wouldn't let us drink. It doesn't say anything about not letting you drink. You were allowed to drink. You just weren't allowed to transport, purchase, or sell or manufacture alcohol. But if you had a store of it ahead of time, you could drink it. Drinking it was okay. But once prohibition started, you could not get more. So now the way to remember the Prohibition era amendments, the 18th Amendment is the one that put prohibition into place. 21st Amendment is the amendment that repeals prohibition. In other words, 18th Amendment, 21st Amendment. So at 18, you cannot drink. At 21, you can. So that's how you remember. So.
Okay.
Like that, huh? Well, I even got a smile from Ron, and the way he's feeling right now, getting a smile is an accomplishment.
Yes, indeed it is.
All right, so 18th Amendment. You'll notice if you have a pocket constitution and there's brackets around it, that's because it's no longer in play. It's no longer effective. That's what the brackets mean. After 1 year from the ratification of this article, the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors within the importation thereof into or the exportation thereof from the United States and all territory subject to this jurisdiction thereof for beverage purposes is hereby prohibited. It does not say that you cannot drink it. It says that it cannot be manufactured, sold, or transported. So, and then there's a time period that it took before this went effective. And so everybody like crazy was buying what they could. Drink it if you have it, but you couldn't get it once this went into effect. Section 2, the Congress and the several states shall have concurrent power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So in other words, federal agencies and local law enforcement both had equal authority to enforce this. This article shall be inoperative until it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of the several states as provided in the Constitution within 7 years from the date of the submission hereof to the states by the Congress. Now remember, at the very beginning it said after 1 year from the ratification. So it gave a year. So this goes into effect once it was ratified. There was a year before it actually went effective. The article was up for ratification up to 7 years. In other words, if it took 6 years to ratify it, it still went into effect. But if the states didn't ratify it within 7 years, then it would expire and it would never happen. It did get ratified. It got ratified in January of 1919. It was repealed in December of 1933 by the 21st Amendment. We'll read that in a minute. But here's what's interesting. Back to section 3 here. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of the several states, as provided in the Constitution. Flip over to 21. Amendment 21, the 18th article of amendment to the Constitution of the United States is hereby repealed. The transportation or importation into any state, territory, or possession of the United States for delivery or use therein of intoxicating liquors in violation of the laws thereof is hereby prohibited. Section 3. Now remember what I said a minute ago about the ratification? It's by the legislatures thereof. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by conventions in the several states as provided by the Constitution. Different form of ratification. To understand that, you need to go back to Article 5. Article 5 on page 15 of your pocket Constitution, if you have one like I have from the nccs.net. Article 5, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution, when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions 3/4 thereof, as the one or other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress. That part right there is what they took advantage of. Congress can decide how it's to be ratified. And in the case of the 18th Amendment, Congress, in proposing that amendment, said we want it to be ratified by the state legislatures. In Amendment 21, in repealing the 18th Amendment, getting rid of prohibition, it says we want it ratified by conventions. The conventions are held by delegates who are from the districts that are set up, and they cannot be office holders. So they're not, delegates are not politicians. They are your friends and neighbors. They're citizens. They're people. We the people. The reason they did that is because the popularity of prohibition did not exist among the people, except for maybe against the ladies who were pushing for temperance. And so in order to make sure it passed, they required that the mode of ratification be that of the state legislatures. They knew the politicians would do it, and they didn't want some of the states sabotaging the passage of this amendment by using conventions and then having it fail because the people were against it. However, when it was time to repeal it, and one of the reasons for repealing it was the Great Depression was going on, and the federal government was desperate for tax money, and taxing alcohol was one of the ways to raise money for this, all of the socialist programs that the Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration were putting forth. They decided they wanted to get rid of prohibition. They needed the tax money. People were ready to drink. Even if they were broke, they were going to find a way to buy their alcohol, and they would pay that alcohol tax. That manufacturing tax is really what it was, of the alcohol. And there was a way for money. But politicians of the state legislatures weren't all too sure they wanted to repeal it. But the people were all the more ready than ever to repeal it. So when it came to the Amendment 21, to make sure that it did get approved, they left it to the people by conventions. So, but it's interesting because it's a great opportunity to see how Congress can. They didn't normally, but every once in a while they did, and they could determine the method of ratification. Prior to that, you really hadn't seen it. Prior to that, it was really up to the state. The state has the choice, and typically they do it through the state legislatures. They can choose to do it by convention. Oh, excuse me. So
None of that.
none of that. Yeah, I tell you, I got in last night at 1:40. So kind of a poop pup. But anyway, let me finish reading 21. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment by to the Constitution by conventions of several states, as provided in the Constitution within 7 years of the date submission hereof of the states to Congress. So like the first one, it has 7-year shelf life. If it didn't get ratified within 7 years, it would die. Both of them got ratified fairly quickly, although the I can't remember. I have it written down somewhere. I can't remember the dates and times, but the ratification to repeal it was a little faster. People couldn't wait to drink. So, and some of you can relate.
How much of it had to do with the fact that people were tired of the violence associated with?
Yeah, there was that too. Yeah, but it was really over tax money mainly, and the violence.
Well, from the government standpoint, it was over tax money, but I'm sure that the people were tired of the violence.
Well, they wanted to drink, and yeah, they were tired of the violence also. Of course, with the mobs, now once alcohol was legal again, their bread and butter was now gone. So they reverted to other things and eventually got into things like drugs and stuff like that. But here's the thing about the mob back then too. They were very, very, very patriotic guys. May not have been following the law, but they loved this country. And so when it came to the fight against like the Nazis and all that, there were many times where the feds and the mob worked together to take out infiltrations. Let's just say
they broke out. Well, they broke the. Highly encourage anybody who's interested in this topic to get the book by Paul Williams called Operation Gladio. They busted out Trafficani and all these guys out of prison that'd been burning the booze, and they used them. They used them on the docks in New York, and they sent them over to Italy to spy for them for the coming invasion of Italy.
Yep.
And after the war, that's what they used the mob guys as the primary couriers for bringing in the opium out of Southeast Asia. Which is what funded the CIA's black operations, and they laundered the money through the Vatican Bank. But that's a whole topic for another conversation.
Yeah, but it does confirm what I had to say. The mobsters may have been criminals, they love this country.
To your point, they were very loyal to America. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. They loved America. Well, only in America could their crime, pay as well as it did.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway. All right, so that's prohibition, and it's funny about prohibition is once prohibition was lifted, there were some counties in America who decided to remain dry counties. They continued with prohibition locally. I remember growing up, I had an uncle. He has since passed away from, heart troubles because of all the alcohol drinking. But that's beside the point. Who would complain because the county he lived in, you couldn't buy alcohol. It was, I can't remember what it's called now, a dry county, but there was another word for it too. And so he would have to drive into the next county to buy his alcohol. I'm like, well, then, Uncle, well, just move there. He never did. His son, by the way, my cousin, is also an alcoholic. Funny how that kind of ran down the same branch of that particular tree, branch on the family tree. But anyway, personally, I enjoy it myself, and I have 2 or 3 beers a year to enjoy it with. Well, maybe a little bit more than that, but yeah, I'm not a big drinker. I like to have one every once in a while, but it better be cold and frosty. And all my German friends say that it has to be cold and frosty because your beer sucks. But that's beside the point. All right, there you go. You got your Jim Beam. I do have a bourbon and Coke though every Thursday, right before class, because it's such a rowdy group. I've got to. No, that's not the reason. But I do have a bourbon and Coke every Thursday right before class. Everybody says it's the most relaxed class I have. So there we go. All right, Amendment 19. Amendment 19. Now let's talk about women's rights for a second. Especially since you teased me last week. Said, no, Doug doesn't believe women should be voting.
Well, I just wanted to see your reaction.
Well, the thing is, there's an awful lot of women I don't think should vote. But then again, there's an awful lot of guys I don't think you should be voting.
Amen to that, brother.
But I always joke around and say that, well, women voting, because they vote with their emotions, and if we just get them quit voting with their emotions, we might, be able to, keep the liberals at bay. But
question: couldn't doctors prescribe alcohol during Prohibition? That's a question.
Yeah, they could.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and when my wife gets all uppity, I prescribe alcohol for her too.
Well, no, that was a legitimate question from Darren.
No, it is. Yes, they could. Alcohol could be prescribed. Man, and there was other idiosyncrasies going on. When it came to women though voting, I remember watching. Can't remember if it was MSNBC or CNN. The two blur into one in my mind, so I can't remember which is which anymore. But I was watching one of them, and I believe it was MSNBC, and a black gentleman who was on the program says he was just hammering on the Constitution, how the Constitution is a bad document. For example, it says right there in the Constitution that women couldn't vote. How sexist of it's a sexist document because it says women can't vote. And I'm like, really? It does? I pull out my Constitution and look again. No, there's no place Constitution says that women can't vote. Never from the beginning did it say women could not vote. What it says is that the manners and procedures of voting for the legislative offices will be left up to the states, and for local offices. It's left up to the states, and the states, for the most part, determined that the best way to go was to have property owners vote. And then the response is, oh, well, that's to keep women and blacks from voting because they couldn't own property. Women could own property. They tended not to. Not because they couldn't, but because it tended to be a man's world. But there were times when a man would die and his wife or his only child was a daughter or something like that would inherit the property, and they would be then property owners, and those women did vote. Also, as we moved westward, you got to remember, a lot of it was not as much the law as it was culture. Women largely didn't vote or get involved in politics because that was a man's thing. It was in the culture, it just wasn't something they wanted to be involved in. But there are some women that were. Elizabeth Powell is a great example. While she didn't vote, she was an influencer. She influenced people like George Washington. So to sit here and say, oh, the Constitution is a sexist document, it says women can't vote. And it never says that. It says you need to be a property owner. The reason for the property owner thing was not to keep blacks and women from voting, as we are told. It was because the people who owned property were the people who had skin in the game.
Right.
If you own property, you were paying property taxes, number one. Number two, you were likely a farmer or a business owner or something of that nature. So you're also paying other taxes, and you were also producing and involved in the economy and so on and so forth. If you were not a property owner, the only way to convince you to vote for a candidate would be for the candidate to promise a gift from the treasury. And this is something that they were trying to avoid, because that is one of the traps of democracy. So the idea was, if you're a property owner, you got skin in the game, that's who we want voting. We don't want people who are simply going to suck off the system voting.
Right. Like we have now.
I would like to see us go back to the at least property owner thing. But maybe
I think
if you don't receive entitlements, you can vote. I don't know.
You know, I almost think that we should have a strict test as to see your knowledge of the politics of the United States. And if you can't pass a basic understanding of what Constitution and then you don't get a chance to vote. I mean,
it's like going back to Jay Leno with the man on the street. Remember that?
Oh,
how little people know.
I mean, those are
Biden. This was back when Biden was vice president. And it's like, shows a picture of Biden. Who's this? The person says, I think he's an actor. And Leno's like, well, you're kind of right. But people don't know. It's like Mark Dice going out there to the ocean side.
I was just gonna say Mark Dice.
And he's like, who did we win in our independence from? And the top two answers were China and Mexico.
Right.
And these are like college age kids. And these people vote.
Sadly.
So the founding fathers, when it came to voting, because they believe that voting was a privilege, not a right. It says right in the amendments that has to do with voting. And that's part of our problem, is we think it's a right. We think it's got to be guaranteed, and the government's got to do everything they can to make sure we get to vote. It's a privilege of citizenship. Should be a privilege of having skin in the game too, in my opinion.
I agree.
And you know who agrees with me on the "it's a privilege, not a right" argument? You're gonna be shocked.
It's in the it's not the founding fathers, but it's in the it's in one of the documents of the.
Also, well, let me name a name for you. You ever heard of Bushrod Washington?
Oh yeah.
Bushrod Washington was George Washington's nephew. Mm-hmm. He was also a Supreme Court justice, and he wrote a book about rights and privileges. And guess what column voting is under? Privilege. It's a privilege. It's a privilege of citizenship. If it's a right, well, then anybody can vote. And that's what the Democrats want. But if it's a privilege of citizenship and skin in the game is where I want, then it totally changes what it's all about. It's a responsibility as well.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, so
I think that's, you know what? It's interesting that you say that. I actually think the word responsibility is a much more apropos word, because it actually designates what you're doing as, it includes the word responsible, because it is a, whether people think, most people just take it very cavalierly. They don't actually take voting seriously. It's like, I'll just go vote, and whoever I put down, they don't take it as seriously as it deserves.
I like the sound of that guy's name. Oh, he's an incumbent. He's probably okay.
Mm-hmm.
Who did you vote for, Doug? Not that I'm a bad voter, but it's like, make your own decisions.
Right.
And base it on your research. My guy's first on the list. I'll pick him. Since I don't know who any of these judges are, that guy sounds okay. It drives me nuts. All right, so the reason why I'm talking about all this is because we're getting ready to talk about the 19th Amendment, which is the amendment that made it a federal requirement that all elections allow women to vote, because there were some districts that did not allow women to vote. But women were voting. The leftist historians, they make it sound like before the 19th Amendment, just women couldn't vote, man. They were,
Doug, give me a second here. Darren, a lot of people have never had civics in high school because they have deliberately taken it away expressly for the reason that they don't want kids to know it. So to your point, yes, a lot of kids have never had civics in high school, but that's not by accident.
Right.
Anyway.
Oh, absolutely. And when we talk about different types of law, do they even describe or explain to you what the different types of law are? You know, you got civic law, you got judicial law, you got social compact law, you got moral law, and so forth. We don't even know that there's different kinds of law. Moral law, that's a natural law. You know, there's a moral compass that we're supposed to follow, and that's the foundation of our system. Civic law, that's your administrative law, legislative law, and your executive law, which is basically Congress, the deep state staffers, and the president, the executive branch. Then you got judicial law. That's a law where they apply the law and they deal out punishment. That's the judges. Social compact law, that has to do with your constitution. It is a social compact. And as a social compact, it is basically a contract between the states, and it's designed to be under contract law, where it's either in the contract or it's not. You can't just imply things. It's, and so it goes deeper in that. But see, none of that is taught. Matter of fact, I'm willing to bet a very large portion of the audience right now, when I'm going through these different types of law, I didn't even know those existed. Of course, you can also get into biblical law, which is fulfilled, when it comes to dietary law and ceremonial law, which no longer exists in the Christian world anyway, because of the coming of Christ. He fulfilled those laws, but in the Jewish religion, certain elements, ceremonial, what?
Nothing. You just said something that piqued my interest when you said Christ came. Anyway, go ahead. It's all right. We'll talk about that later.
Christ fulfilled.
Yes, exactly. Christ fulfilled the law, 100%. Absolutely, 1,000% agree.
All right, so I'm confused.
Nah, that's okay.
The drugs are influencing his brain.
No, I'm actually pretty much drug free right now. I'm struggling with the pain.
Then my recommendation is, Ron, go get drugged up, please, so that you're easier to deal with. All right. Now I explained all of that, but I want to talk about one more thing before I read the amendment.
All right, I'm gonna do some drugs just for you, Doug. I'm gonna celebrate.
See, that's why he's drug free. I'm gonna
celebrate the repeal of the 21st of the 18th Amendment.
Yeah, he's celebrating the. Oh boy! All right, so as we moved westward into the frontier, two things were readily understood. Number one, you don't have a gun, you're dead. And number two, right. It takes two to survive.
Amen to that.
The men and the women worked together, and the women began to be seen more as equals in this partnership of survival. And so you got this partnership of survival, and because women are beginning to be seen as being more of an equal on the frontier, you saw in local elections women voting no problem, and even sometimes holding office. In Wyoming, places like Wyoming and the Dakotas, you would see even women mayors in some of these towns. So the idea that women didn't vote before the 19th Amendment is poppycock. However, that said, I'm going to read the 19th Amendment, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it says and the reasons behind it. So 19th Amendment, the right, remember it's a privilege in my opinion, but they say right, the right of citizens. By the way, notice it says the citizens to vote. It has to be a citizen. Like 5 times Constitution, it says you got to be a citizen to vote. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. This is the last progressive era amendment. It's at the very tail end of the progressive era. And some people will even argue the reason why it passes because Calvin Coolidge, Harding had won the previous election. Calvin Coolidge now was, with Harding's death, was kind of controlling things. And the progressives of the Democrat Party didn't like the fact that the Republican Party had let go of progressivism. Prior to Harding and Coolidge, both parties considered themselves progressive. Both parties pushed for progressive ideals. The Republican Party said, nah, not going to do this, and left progressivism for the most part. And so the Marxists decided to choose the Democrat Party as their party of choice. And that's how they would bring Marxism about in America. But anyway, side story. But anyway, so they wanted to create more voters, and women tended to support the progressive ideals because the progressives tended to be, but we're going to look out for your community, and we agree with your temperance movement. We're going to work with you on these issues. So women tended to want to vote in that direction. What's interesting, though, is the temperance movement. I mean, the 19th Amendment was actually a Republican push. So it's a weird puzzle because the progressives wanted it because they knew that they had a lot of women voters. The Republicans wanted it because they knew it was the right thing to do. All men are created, all people were created equal. And Susan B. Anthony was a Republican. Let me say it again. Susan B. Anthony was a Republican. This idea of making sure everybody got the opportunity to vote was a Republican idea. Now, I don't like to talk about party. And if I'm sorry for those of you who are like, I don't care, man, there's no difference between the Republicans and Democrats. For the most part, you're right. But during that time period, the dynamics between the parties was a very interesting thing because the Republicans were starting to move away from progressivism and towards conservatism. And the Democrat Party was going deeper into progressivism at that time. And the separation of the parties became quite evident. The contrast was glaring. Not so much now since they drink from the same trough. But that's
Doug, I don't want to derail you, but I don't want to forget this question. Joanne asked about common law. This goes back to a little bit earlier when you were talking about different types of law, and she asked about common law. What about common law?
English common law was actually what we're trying to get away from. And there's a lot of groups and theories right now saying we want to go back to common law. And that's an error. Common law is unwritten law that's accepted by the populace that is typically changed by precedent and case law because it's alive and breathing and living and breathing and sways with the wind. The reason for a constitution was so that our law was written down. It was set, stagnant. It could not just be changed through the whims of judges and politicians like common law could. So from that point of view, we were actually trying to get away from common law. That's the reason why we wrote our Constitution, to get away from the unwritten common law. However, in common law were also a lot of advantages too, because in common law, the people could have citizen grand juries, things like that, because of common law. So there's advantages and disadvantages to common law. And the citizens grand juries, or I like to call them common law grand juries, is something I would like to get back to. These are grand juries that are populated by the people. They can issue indictments that the sheriff would arrest based on. Wouldn't it be nice if we had common law grand juries, citizen grand juries, where we're issuing indictments for all of these treasonous bastards that are holding office? So when it comes to common law grand juries, common law is a wonderful thing. When it comes to the basis of common law, where it changes with the whims of the courts and the politicians and precedent and case law, not so much, not a good thing. And that's what the founders are trying to get away from, trying to get away from that element of what common law was. Any other questions?
Nope, that was it.
Okay. So back to the 19th Amendment. So we got the situation where we want women to, we want to make sure that they're voting in all elections, not just out west or in places where they own property or something like that. So 19th Amendment. And women's suffrage had been a movement that had started actually 100 years before, longer than 100 years. In fact, Thomas Jefferson, Aaron Burr were two of the people that pushed for women's rights. In fact, Aaron Burr actually suggested that there should be a federal law allowing or making sure that women have the opportunity to vote, because he realized that women voted in a minority because of the property owner rule at the state level. In the case of Aaron Burr, he also made sure that his daughters were well educated so they could take care of themselves in case they didn't find a man. And so this idea of women being involved and having a say in the governmental system was something that was already being talked about more than 100 years before the 19th Amendment, but it did not go onto paper and become a federal requirement through an amendment to the Constitution until the 19th Amendment.
Gotcha.
All right. And once again, like I said, there's nothing in there that says that women couldn't vote. It's just it wasn't in the culture. And also they tended not to be property owners. All right. So that's the 19th Amendment. We got the 20th Amendment now. And this changed the a lot about the presidency because of different things. I'll go over it as we go. The terms of this is page 29. If you have this particular pocket constitution, Amendment 20, the terms of the president and vice president shall end at noon on the 20th day of January. Prior to that, inauguration day was March. So they're taking 2 months off of the lame duck session. They're dropping it from 4 months down to 2 months. Election day had been in November prior to, but it wasn't until March before this that the president took office. So the terms of the president and vice president shall end at noon on the 20th day of January, and the terms of senators and representatives at noon on the 3rd day of January of the years in which such terms would have ended if this article had not been ratified. The terms of their successors shall then begin. Section 2, the Congress shall assemble at least once in every year. I love that sentence. It's the second time it's mentioned. Congress shall assemble at least one time a year. I wish it was only one time a year. During the convention, there were actually those that argued one time a year was too often.
Really?
I like those guys. You know, when Congress is doing, it's like, well, you know, you've heard me tell a story about, you know, Obama going golfing, right? And I'd get all excited, and conservatives would be upset. Oh, look, he's a do-nothing president. No, I want him on the golf course. The less he does, the happier I am. But anyway, Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meeting shall begin at noon on the 3rd day of January, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. Well, if the 3rd of January falls on a Sunday or something like that, they might want to change it to a different day. Congress, if at the time fixed for the beginning of the term of the president shall have died. In other words, the president has been elected, but before they can become president, they die. A lot of people thought that might happen to Biden. The vice president elect shall become president. So to answer the question, oh, well, if he died, then that meant Pelosi became president, right? No. Kamala Harris would have become president, and it had Biden, let's say, died between election day and inauguration day, then Harris would have stepped in as president, and then she would have nominated the new vice president, and then the Senate would have to confirm, well, actually both houses would have to confirm, in this case, who the new vice president is. They would have to approve it. Then it says, if a president shall not have been chosen before the time fixed for the beginning of his term, well, let's say nobody got the majority in the electoral college, and the House had not come to the decision. They kept tying on the vote. Nobody got a majority. If a president shall not have been chosen before the time fixed for the beginning of his term, or if the president-elect shall have failed to qualify. Turns out they're not a natural-born citizen, or they don't have a majority of electoral votes, number of things it could be. Then the vice president-elect shall act as president until a president shall have qualified. And the Congress may by law provide for the case wherein neither a president-elect nor a vice president-elect shall have qualified. So what if both of them didn't qualify? President and the vice president. Then it's up to Congress, that's both houses, House and Senate, to determine or to declare who's going to act as president. That person's not going to be president. They're going to act as president until it can all be resolved. Or the manner in which one of who is to act shall be selected, and such person shall act accordingly until a president or vice president shall have qualified. Once again, they're acting. They are not the actual president. They're acting as president until the president is qualified. There's all kinds of possible scenarios we could have seen in the last election just with that stuff right there. Section 4, the Congress may by law provide for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the House of Representatives may choose a president whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them. The Congress may by law provide for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the House of Representatives may choose a president whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them, and for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the Senate may choose a vice president whenever the right of choice shall devolve upon them. Comes down to Congress. House chooses the president, Senate chooses the vice president. Sections 1 and 2 shall take effect on the 15th day of October following the ratification of this article. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of 3/4 of several states within 7 years from the day of its submission. The problem here is what you got to realize this came in.
Hold on, Doug. I have a question here. I kind of already have an idea of what your answer is going to be. This is a little bit controversial because I know there is a segment of people out there who do believe, and I'm kind of one of them, but I'm still on the fence about the 1871 Constitution. And somebody's asking, aren't we going back to the old constitutional law of 1776 versus what happened when the America became a corporation in 1871? So I know that answer that you're going to give an answer that is probably going to be along the lines of your mindset and what you believe. And so I will give you the floor on that answer, on that question.
All right. This is a common question. In fact, one of the reasons why I didn't get home until 1:30 in the morning was because a member of the class in Huntington Beach last night, who was brand new to the class, was talking about this. And there's also an assemblies organization out there who's all has to do with sovereignty and stuff, is also talking about this. The idea that the United States is a corporation, based on my research, is false. The fact that it's in all caps, the founders all capped it back then because that's what they did for emphasis. That did not mean anything other than that they all capped the name of the United States of America for emphasis. Just because later on in law it says, well, if something's all capped, that means it's a corporation. That doesn't mean that that's what the founders meant. And a lot of people say, well, yeah, but they changed it in 1871. It wasn't originally all capped. Actually, it was. The 1871 Act did not incorporate the United States into a corporation. What it did is it incorporated the city of Washington, D.C. into a municipal corporation, which means it was able to have its own government, which it didn't before, because it was a seat of government. Congress had total control over Washington, D.C. and all the areas surrounding it. What this did is by incorporating it as a city, making it a municipal corporation, the Act of 1871 allowed Washington, D.C. to have a population, allowed them to have their own government, allowed them to make their own decisions and to determine their own laws locally, removing Congress from that role. That was the purpose of the Act of 1871. The term corporation and incorporate has more than one meaning. Now, that said, one other thing that I've argued is this. Even if the corporation thing was totally true, see, I'm cynical by nature. I need a lot of evidence and a lot of logic. Matter of fact, I was talking to a woman who listens to this show earlier on the phone because she's helping me organize one of the things out there on my trip. And we talked about this, and she's asking me these questions. And I really didn't get into it as much with her on the phone because we were more talking about the trip. But anyway, and so I'm very cynical anyway. I have to see some pretty solid evidence for anything. And the evidence I've seen for that theory doesn't hold up and it doesn't fit logic. But even if it was true, it doesn't help or hurt my cause of getting us back to the Constitution. And the answer for America, whether it's true or not, is still getting back to the original intent of the original Constitution. So to me, it's more of a distraction than anything. Now, that said, I understand why people want to follow things like that because we're looking for answers. We're looking for reasons. And we're looking for ways to beat this crap that's going on. And that, for some people, they believed is a good avenue for that. And I'm fine with that. Go for it. If that's what you believe, that's fine. But I'm very cynical about it once again, because the evidence is not hard enough for me. And once again, from a logic standpoint, it doesn't really help or hurt my cause. So therefore, it's not important enough for me to chase after, because I got my own fish I need to fry, and that's a distraction to what I'm trying to do. And the answer is still getting back to the original Constitution, whether it's true or not. As for one other aspect that's sometimes tied into it is the Treaty of Verona. Treaty of Verona also indicates that not only are we a corporation, but that we have been sold to the Vatican. Treaty of Verona was actually created by a newspaper falsely to create a conspiracy theory so they could sell more newspapers. So the Treaty of Verona never actually existed. And I've done extensive research on that one too. And so in that case, Treaty of Verona, I'm not even going to be close to believing it because I know it's false. All right. There's my essential thing.
One other question here is, what about the Home Rule Act of 1873? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know enough about that to make a comment.
Okay. So,
but I'll look it up.
I know, and there's some people who disagree with you here, and
that's fine.
And I understand that. Yeah,
that's fine.
I knew that was going to come.
Yeah,
because
here's the thing. Let me say this real quick. It's like, and I'm going to use Ron and I as an example. Ron and a friend of ours named Joe and I have 3 different ideas about prophecy when it comes to being Christians. And in the end, I really don't care. We believe in the same Jesus. You have different ideas about corporation. I don't care. We still have the same ideas when it comes to getting back to the original intent. We're still patriots. We still love what this country is supposed to be. And so we can have those disagreements. That's okay. But really, for me, it's all about getting back to the original intent of the Constitution. Number 1. Number 2, I teach the way it's supposed to be. I'm not going to give you, I'm not here to give answers. I'm here to give you the information so that you can use it to formulate your conclusions and use it for your activism. But
okay, and this is this is an interesting question. Darren's saying, isn't that what put us under maritime law? And
we're not under maritime law.
Okay. Now, if we're not under maritime law, then how do you explain the yellow fringe on the flags?
Yellow fringe on the flag does not make it a maritime law flag. Yellow fringe was actually instituted by the Army as originally it was just Army, because it was a way to dress up the flag for their ceremonies. Fringe on the flag means it's a ceremonial flag. That's all it means. The Army began to put the fringe on there because whenever they had their ceremonies and they were in their dress uniform, they felt it was a way of putting the flag in its dress uniform, to dress it up by putting the fringe on it. It was adopted later by the United States government for all military to use as the dress form of the flag. And that's all it is. It is a ceremony. It is the yellow fringe means that it is a ceremonial version of the flag. It's not supposed to be flown outside. It is for indoor ceremonies only. It does not signify that it is a maritime flag.
Okay. Okay.
Boy, Q&A is vicious today.
There's not too much logic with our government leaders right now. Amen to that, Joanne.
Yeah, let me say this. They drink from the same trough. While I am a registered Republican, because I think that's the vehicle I have the best chance of slamming the brakes on, I'm a constitutionalist first and a Christian first. Party really is just a couple of vehicles they're out there running around. And unfortunately, currently, neither one of them can be trusted.
Well, it's like WWE, man. That's what it's WWF. I can't stand WWE. It's WWF. They appear to be enemies on camera, and then they're snorting cocaine and and doing all the other stuff behind closed doors together.
Pretty much.
So that's exactly what they're doing. Jean says Congress was back. Congress, I think she means Congress was in charge of DC back then.
Yes.
Okay.
Prior to 1871, Congress was in charge of DC.
Okay.
And Article 4 and Article 1, Section 8 explains that.
Why would it also be used when Biden was speaking, as I remember seeing as not the military? Why would it also be used? I think she's speaking about the flag. Why would it also be used when Biden was speaking, as I remember seeing as he's not the military? It's
a ceremonial flag, first of all. Second of all, he's commander in chief.
And so I'm not, I'm not 100%.
And I mean, the courts have it too, because it's a ceremonial flag. It's a dressed up flag. It's like, it's like almost like the way they look at it, it's almost like that's the way the flag is in a suit. When it doesn't have its fringe, it's not in its suit. But it makes nice and dressy when it's got its fringe. It's a dressed up ceremonial flag.
Gene,
that's where it comes from.
Gene, I asked him about the 1973 Home Rule Act, and he said he doesn't know enough to comment about it.
Yeah, but I'll look it up. I'll look into it.
Okay. It's 358, brother. Let's
the 1873. What's the name of the act again? The what act?
1973 Home Rule Act.
Oh, 1973.
1973 Home Rule Act.
Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with that at all. Oh, that was Nixon.
Right.
Get a pin here somewhere. Thought I had a pin right here on my desk. There we go. All right. 1973 Home Rule Act. Y'all look it up. I don't know anything about it. I know a lot, but I don't know everything.
Right. Well, I don't know about that, Doug.
Yeah. I know more than the average bear. So I'm Yogi. I got a few boo-boos around me.
Yeah.
My wife's the mama grizzly, so as Yogi, I get nervous.
So, all right, guys. Well, on that note, it's 3:59 out here in California, where Doug and I are. So we are going to we're going to cut it loose because Doug has about an hour trip to go to the beach to teach another Constitution class tonight.
Yep.
So we're going to cut it loose at that point, and I'm really uncomfortable sitting in this chair, and I really need to stand up.
Yeah, and now reminder for those of you who are here. Next week, I'm on my tour, so no Tuesday thing.
Yeah, there will not be a class next week. So we'll do a class the following week.
Yeah, so we'll see you in 2 weeks here online. 2 weeks.
Right.
And if you're in any of those cities I'm going to be at, get a hold of me, constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com. We'll meet. We'll get together. You buy a book from me and I'll sign it, whatever. All right.